My name is Glen, Scrivener, and with me is...
Nathan, James, Hamden, Morgan, Locke. I have to use all my names because they've been put on the lower third.
Yes. Have they, though? Are they across?
I was told.
Yes.
I was reliably
I think they're still
informed.
typing it out.
They probably are. But there we go.
And we are here to make Sixth Sense, which was an excellent pun made by Thomas Thorogood here at SpeakEasy.
Well done, Thomas.
Yes, making Sixth Sense. Speaking about January the 6th, and according to Kamala Harris, it will pass into infamy as a day just like 9/11, just like
Pearl Harbor.
Yep. People will say January the 6th because of what happened at the Capitol building 1 year ago.
Yep.
But also in church history, it is known as Epiphany. And
Epiphany.
Thousands of years.
In fact, we should write that down.
Epiphany, yes.
I'm going to try and write that on there.
Have you had an epiphany?
Have you had an epiphany?
Nathan.
Yeah.
What does epiphany mean?
Epiphany basically refers to the visit of the Magi to the little baby Jesus.
The little baby Jesus.
Little baby Jesus. So to sum that up is to say that that's when they arrive and they are Gentiles, so that's a significant thing because it's the first time we get Gentiles interacting with the incarnate Son of God.
Yeah. And epiphany itself means appearance or manifestation.
Yes.
And it's very much related to the word theophany, which is an appearance of God. And so isn't it a very striking thing that this appearance of God is the appearance of the ickle baby Jesus?
Yes.
And there he is. And in the East, they celebrate mainly the baptism of Jesus on this day. They're not so much into the wise men from the East.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's
So in the Eastern Orthodox Church, today is the day when, but again, it's still called Epiphany.
Yep.
But for them, Epiphany is when the heavens were opened and we got to see into heaven. And that moment of Christ's baptism, that very Trinitarian moment, the Father declares him to be his Son and the Spirit fills him. That is one kind of epiphany, one kind of shining out, one kind of manifestation, one kind of theophany. And the time when the Magi come is another kind of manifestation and bright, shiny thing. So that
is it phinos? Is that the Greek word?
It's related to phino, shining.
Phino, the shining.
Yeah. What we are is plain to people.
Which is why people use it when they say they've had an epiphany, because they've had this moment of realization, discovery, something has shone.
It's an appearance. It's something has brought itself to their attention, and they cannot take their eyes off it. It has appeared to them. It has manifested to them.
Yeah.
And it's made us think, okay, are there ways in which January 6th, 2021 was an appearance or what is it that Epiphany, this ancient feast...
Yeah, well, this is the thing, because obviously we're connecting together now. This, it seems like, is going to be an annual commemoration or acknowledgement or whatever they're going to do.
Depending on who's in power.
Yeah. But in the same way, the 6th of January is going to seemingly fit into the American civic calendar in a similar way to November the 5th. Would appear in the British calendars, remembering Guy Fawkes and the Gunpowder Plot. But I suppose what's interesting is we're going to talk today about Epiphany, which happens to be on the same date, and we are going to be drawing some thematic, symbolic themes which are similar, we think, between the events on the Capitol Hill in 2021 and the visit of the Magi, as recorded for us in Matthew 2. But it is interesting that I wonder whether... do you think there's much of a connection between the idea of Epiphany and revelation, which comes from the... what's it called? Apocalypse. Apocalypse. The unveiling. Yeah. And so there's a sense in which people thought... I think the reason why so many of the images from last year was so vivid and so strong was because it felt like, for a lot of people, this was finally the unmasking of Trumpism. Finally, it was shown for what it was. And what was it? It was the QAnon shaman with his bearskin hat and his horns and his face painted like, William Wallace in Braveheart, stripped to the waist with a megaphone, sort of shrieking out his war cry. That was sort of felt like, I think, for the public imagination, an unveil. This was really what was going on all along, and finally it's shown itself in its true colours.
Yeah. And yet there were so many evocative images as well. I mean, there were gallows erected, on the lawns of the Capitol. There were Confederate flags next to Jesus Saves.
Yeah.
Next to Stop the Steal, and calls for President Pence to be brought to treason charges and things like that. And so there was just a confluence of, so as with every mob. You go to Acts chapter 22, and you see the mob at work, and one lot shout one thing, one shout another thing, and nobody else knows why they're there.
Yes,
there are all sorts of people caught up in this, and yet there are also like militias, self-styled militias doing this, and then there are people who just got caught up in the QAnon thing, and one woman had a heart attack. Who was there, trampled in the crowd, and just seems to have gotten swept up, and she was there for the Trump speech, and ends up there. And so, we want a clear narrative of this is what's going on. But in a sense, the mess is part of what we'll remember.
Yes, I mean the chaos of it, and the sense that it was this sort of unfolding thing. I mean, in one sense, it was interesting because it was over very quickly. It was a very, very short-lived moment of madness and moment of chaos, because the meeting that was interrupted in the Capitol building continued later on that day, because after all the melee and all the breaching of the Capitol building, was it the National Guard had then been mobilized?
Only 4 hours later they were mobilized, because the optics were bad, because it would look like it was a crisis. Well, guess what, it was.
And the fact that then it was then cleared, so the meeting then continued, albeit obviously with a lot of people very shaken up and having kind of been ferreted away into different rooms. But there was in that sense, it was this short, sharp shock of madness and rioting and mob mentality. But then, of course, because it's now going to be replayed seemingly year after year. I mean, if one thing that I learned in America is Americans love reenacting things.
Okay.
They really, really do.
Yeah.
So we didn't live too far from Gettysburg, and so you were constantly aware of the reenactments of Civil War, battles and things like that. And the sort of American historians who were sort of investigating every single detail of this. But of course, most of us don't investigate the detail. We're looking for the big picture, the symbol, the headline, the front page picture. And I think that seems to be the thing that lingers and lasts.
Yeah.
Even if some of the details, well, actually, there's all sorts of other things that were going on at the same time. Yeah. So that challenge of dealing with the symbolism and the effectively the myth of what happened, not say that it didn't happen at all, but to say the power of that story versus the kind of forensic, okay, what was going on, what was this, how was this,
Yeah.
And we live in that world. We always live in that world.
Yes, exactly.
Where we have to relate the symbolic and the sort of historic.
Yeah, which is why when Kamala Harris said, it will live together with 9/11 and Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
That's because, okay, here's American soil, and the ships are taken out by the Japanese. Okay, or where does Al Qaeda aim for?
Yeah.
Twin Towers.
Yeah.
Pentagon, White House.
Yeah.
The symbolism of it is the very point of it.
Yeah.
And there would be more concentrated places where people were than the Pentagon, for instance. But it's the symbolism.
Yeah.
And then the symbolism of a modern temple, can we say?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we yes, you go and visit it, and you sort of could be convinced that it was, based on St Paul's Cathedral. It certainly got that same sort of architectural approach. Now, I mean, what's interesting is that the events of January the 6th, 2021, will have a lasting legacy in a way that other civic disturbances, federal buildings being attacked through, the year prior to that, won't have, because of the symbolism of the Capitol building.
Yeah.
Because of it's the sacred place, as you
Right.
say, it's the temple, and there was the abomination that causes desolation.
Yeah, it
right
felt like
there in
that.
the middle.
Yeah.
Because those people do not enter this place.
Right.
The people who enter this place are respectable, are respectful, are
of the sacred space.
live in honor and or at least civil. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Whereas there
yeah.
was nothing about those events
Yeah.
that was civil.
Yeah, yeah, and I do like that comparison with Guy Fawkes as well in terms of it was failed. It was there was something pathetic about it and threatening about it, all at the same time. And I think it's in commenting on it, it's difficult to strike both those notes.
Yes.
That it was really pathetic, and it was really scary.
Yeah.
And you can't watch the cell phone footage without thinking, oh my goodness, to be there would be to be swept up in a lot of madness. And if they had have got their hands on Nancy Pelosi, what would have happened? If they had have got their hands on Mike Pence, what would have happened? Who knows? But the fact that they didn't, and the fact that we have that question speaks both to the patheticness of it, but also the scariness of it. Yeah.
Yes, and I think think about the gunpowder plot. Clearly there's a group of people who were involved in planning that for a considerable period of time. Now, I don't know how many people were involved in really thinking through carefully what they planned to do on the 6th of January 2021. But I suppose the difference is once you have a mob, once you have a group of people who are feeling, we keep saying ostrich-sized because I can't say ostracized very quickly. So a lot of people feeling ostrich-sized and feeling angry and feeling emboldened because Trump has just given some speech which has in no way calmed things down whatsoever, in many ways sort of encouraged what was happening. And they go in there and they haven't got a plan and they're full of it. And it felt to me, the closest I think I would have come to it is a kind of, I don't know, sort of schoolboys breaking into the Memorial Hall, late one night and trying on a bunch of like old school caps and stuff. Do you know, like a sort of, no one quite knows what the next person's going to do. And they're sort of egging each other on. And there's a kind of, and some people are just taking selfies and other people have got a real plan because they're going to go find someone and take them out.
I mean, the one thing was to stop the steal, right?
Yes.
The so-called steal.
Yeah.
Like because the vote was going to get ratified in Congress and Trump even portrays Pence as a traitor in doing that, and so in a sense they delay that, or that's their little victory.
Yeah,
and then after that, there's the euphoria of they stopped the steal.
Yeah,
and then finally the National Guard comes, and finally there's a preparedness from the National Security Services. There should absolutely been much better preparedness from National Security, but beyond stopping them sign the piece of paper. What's the plan? What do you guys want to do? This is. So that's good. I like the November the 5th gunpowder and plot.
Yeah.
Although
and exposed. In one sense, Trump was, I suppose, exposed by this kind of this patheticness in lots of ways behind what, so Rudy Giuliani's,
the dye coming down,
the hair dye coming down when he's in a press conference, then booking the Four Seasons landscaping outside Philadelphia instead of booking, which it's a sort of, it's like Veep or it's like in the thick of it. You sort of can't believe that things could be that pathetic. And in a way, we don't want them. We want rulers, we want leaders who are strong and who are competent and who do the right thing. And when we get the wrong leaders, well, let's hope they're at least impotent, right? Let's hope that they haven't got a clue what they're doing and they're pathetic and useless, because then they're actually less dangerous in a way. And so the impotency, I think, of it's interesting. Sorry, I know we actually want to talk about Epiphany, but just back on that, when Trump had the election debates with Biden, I think it was the second one, and it was an absolute kind of garbage can fire of a debate, and they just talked over each other. It just descended into sort of chaos. There was a question right at the end of the debate in which Trump basically said, I'm not going to we shouldn't accept the result of this. Or he questioned the validity of the election before it happened. And at that point you just go, right, you're not going to accept this. It's not going to happen. Little change of microphones for the Reverend Scrivener here. Is that good? Could you not hear a single word he was saying? It was just okay, very good. So I think that for me was a point at which I thought, oh goodness, this is already looking like it's going to be just mad. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
When the mail-in ballots and stuff was coming in. Anyway, we don't need to talk about that. We actually want to talk about the other January the 6th.
The other January the 6th, because I think it was exactly that questioning of the legitimacy of authority and questioning of the legitimacy of who gets to rule us and on what basis. That's, Trump's calling it a stolen election, led to that, I think. And what I think we see in Matthew 2, which is right at the heart of Epiphany, is the undermining of any sense that we, according to the flesh and according to our own strengths, have the legitimacy to rule. Yeah. Because what you've got in Matthew 2 is Herod and the Magi.
Yeah.
And in the figure of Herod, let's have a look at what we've got with Matthew chapter 2. And what we've got in the story of the three kings, as it's come to be known, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem. So already, like, Magi versus Herod is kind of the big battle. One, by the flesh, is the king of the Jews. The others are like total outsiders. You could not think of like, these are astrologers, these are magicians, these are Babylonian, and people who have always been the baddies, and they came from the east, the place of estrangement, and they come to Zion, where Herod is meant to be ruling. And they ask, where is the one who has been born king of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. And so clearly they're like, well, it's not you. The king of the Jews is not you. So, like, imagine the affront to Herod's narcissism. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. Like, surely the Bible guys, they're going to set things straight, right? And the Bible guys say, in Bethlehem in Judea, they replied, for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. And of course, the shepherd imagery is just so huge in the scriptures. Looking after the flock will be the marker of what a true king of the Jews is like, as opposed to Herod, who famously killed, I think, 3 of his sons. Caesar Augustus once said, hilariously, he would rather be Herod's pig than his son. Here was a man who was so despotic, he actually ordered for a nobleman to be killed on the day of his funeral, because he knew that no one would mourn him, but he commanded that there would be some kind of genuine mourning on his day of his death. Right. So, like, let's kill somebody who people care about. So that there'll be tears at my funeral.
That is
Okay.
quite the manipulative.
That's who we're talking about.
Yeah.
But the Bible guys are on his side, and the Bible guys are like, yeah, no, Micah 5, that's very clear. The Old Testament scriptures, Bethlehem, that's where the Messiah is going to be born.
Yeah.
Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him. So, he can pretend to worship Jesus too, right?
Yeah.
Then we've got, after verse 9, after they heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. So that's Epiphany.
And that's where we stop in the Bible reading, because as a general rule for your Christmas carol service, you don't carry on.
You don't have a murder of the innocents.
Yeah.
We can go to verse 16. When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning. Yeah. So that's who Herod is.
Yeah.
But this is just plugging into this massive theme in the scriptures that to trust in your authority on the basis of your own strengths is kind of satanic. And here is the King of the Jews according to the flesh, trusting in his own might, absolutely petrified that the true King of the Jews will show up, and wanting to do anything to kind of eliminate Christ from his kind of rule. And then you've got the Magi, who are embodying something very different from the East. So what do we learn about... What do we learn about the Magi? Like, why gold, frankincense, and myrrh, for instance?
Magi was an interesting one because it's not the only time that Greek word magoi, which is the plural of magos, the wise men, it's not the only time it appears. You can also find the Greek word in the Greek version of the Old Testament, the Septuagint, which frequently uses the word magoi in the book of Daniel to refer to the magicians, magi, magicians, not magicians, but the...
He's magic, Ian.
He's magic, Ian.
Astrologers,
soothsayers, all these kind of exciting people. And they're involved in Babylon, where Daniel, as the great wise man of Babylon, has been raised up to the highest place and given sort of, great sort of responsibility, and has responsibility over these wise men and collected astrologers and all those sorts of people. So it's just interesting when we can see that there is the reference to this, I don't know, we wouldn't call them a caste or class of people, but this group of people in the Old Testament, and that gives us a clue as to what kind of people they are.
Yeah.
But not only that, we also get the shape of what happens in Matthew 2 with the visit of the wise men keeps appearing in the Old Testament in types and shadows, and Queen of Sheba visiting Solomon and Psalm 72 and all those. So there's not only this group of people that you can sort of trace back, and we've got a little quote about where some of them might have come from. You've also got this repeated pattern of the nations coming to bow down and honor and worship the one who is king over Israel. which is glorious.
Should we have a look at Psalm 72? Because
Sure.
that's kind of part of where we get, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and the kings coming to worship Christ. And it's just a beautiful psalm about the advent of Christ. It's of Solomon, so it's this sense of the son of David, but in this very messianic sense. Psalm 72, endow the king with your justice, O God, the royal son with your righteousness. May he judge your people in righteousness, your afflicted ones with justice. May the mountains bring prosperity to the people, the hills the fruit of righteousness. May he defend the afflicted among the people and save the children of the needy. Again, very different to Herod, that king of the Jews. He will, it's the just and gentle rule of King Jesus, as the prayer book puts it. And may he crush the oppressor. May he endure as long as the sun, as long as the moon, through all generations. May he be like rain falling on a mown field, like showers watering the earth. In his days may the righteous flourish, and prosperity abound till the moon is no more. May he rule from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. May the desert tribes bow before him, and his enemies lick the dust. May the kings of Tarshish and of distant shores bring tribute to him. May the kings of Sheba and Seba bring him gifts. We might get back to that. May all kings bow down to him, and all nations serve him. For he will deliver the needy who cry out, the afflicted who have no one to help. He will take pity on the weak and the needy, and save the needy from death. He will rescue them from oppression and violence, for precious is their blood in his sight. Long may he live. May gold from Sheba be given to him. May people ever pray for him and bless him all day long. May grain abound throughout the land. On the tops of the hills may it sway. May the crops flourish like Lebanon and thrive like the grass of the field. May his name endure forever. May it continue as long as the sun. Then all nations will be blessed through him, and they will call him blessed. Praise be to the Lord God, the God of Israel, who alone does marvelous deeds. So there
It's a good psalm for the day, isn't it?
It's a great one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, on what basis does this ruler rule? It's actually, the mercy towards the weak and the vulnerable. And when he crushes anybody, it's the oppressor that he crushes. Yeah. And then you get all the kings coming from everywhere. Sheba and Seba are two of the places mentioned, and gold and incense are kind of mentioned. Yeah. And so we're starting to figure out why Matthew is talking about kings from the east or Magi from the east. Yeah. And if we do think that Daniel was there with the Magi in Babylon, then the scriptures were there in Babylon. And there was a massive diaspora in Babylon, especially in the intertestamental times. So there's definitely Hebrew influence, definitely the scriptures going out east. And you just wonder whether that's sort of part of this global sense that a golden child's going to be born. Yeah. Because even in Rome, you've got that golden child. Yeah. You've got Virgil's fourth eclogue, where he talks about the golden child's going to be born and bring in a golden age.
It's a new age of Saturn, something like that.
Yeah. So it seems like not just the people of God, but the nations are on tiptoe, waiting for, please, can we have a ruler who will serve and bless and lift up the lowly. And the kings, the Magi, they seem to have hope.
Yes, and they find him, even though we would probably find them slightly odd and a bit sort of funny looking and peculiar.
The magician, like when I told Ruby, she was like because we did the nativity and she was like kings. I was like, well, it doesn't actually say they're kings. It says they're Magi. She says, what's Magi? So what's like from the word magicians? She was like, they're magicians.
Magicians.
That Ian.
I'm going to keep...
I love Electric Ian or Pediatric Ian is one of my...
But what's interesting, so what's fascinating with that is that magic now, if you sort of talk about to a lot of people about, can you name any magicians? They'll probably name a bunch of street magicians or people who kind of, who was like sort of Darren Brown, like David,
the guy Blaine,
sitting in a perspex box, but in a way, I was thinking about this with reading the Harry Potter books. In one way, that brought magic back into this idea of witches and funny hats and wizards and wands and all that sort of stuff. And it gave some kind of shape and color and texture to this very foreign, weirdy sounding world that most of us, I think, within, evangelical circles, feel weirded out by.
Yeah.
And so we often, I think it's quite funny, I was reading a chapter where the Dursleys, who are, I think, the most interesting group of people, they're trying to get to the bottom of why yet another, crazy bunch of things have happened. And they are concerned that there be no magic, there be no kind of mystery, everything is actually explainable, and there's nothing out there that we don't understand, and all this sort of stuff. And you just get this incredible comedy, seeing people sort of who are so kind of tightly wound that anything be a bit weird.
Yes. Yeah.
That it just is such comedy.
They're playing whack-a-mole with the supernatural.
Yes.
And you can't.
And you can't do it.
It overwhelms you.
And there's something really quite fun about the fact that every year we encourage children across the UK to dress up as these weird, magi, and everyone, are they kings? Are they just wise men? How are you supposed to do it? And they get to wear the funny outfits.
Yeah.
And they bring these little gifts, which most of us don't understand.
Well, they are the counterparts in so many ways to the shepherds. And in one sense, the Magi seem to be very wealthy, whereas the shepherds were, much more at the lower end of the socio-economic scale. Yeah. More importantly, they are Gentiles, where the shepherds are Jews.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is to see, okay, how is God going to reveal himself to the Jewish shepherds? Okay, angels. And angels come, and the glory shines around in this most unmistakable way. Yeah. And they are spoken to and sung to, and it's a verbal proclamation. Yeah. Whereas the Gentiles, you get a pinprick of light. Yes. And stars, which are twinned with angels in lots of ways in the Bible, because the heavenly host is not only a term referring to the angelic armies, it's also referring to the stars. And you read in places like Revelation 12, where stars kind of well, at 1 minute it's a star, the next minute it's an angel. Yes. But essentially the Gentiles, they don't get the speaking star. Yes. They get the mute star.
Yeah. And there's a sort of distance. They are removed from them at that sense. They're not being directly communicated with in the sense that the angels come to particular shepherds. Yeah. And it's in Voyage of the Dawn Treader, where Lewis does that great thing about, I've never met a star. In our world, stars are
stars are balls of gas.
It's like, no,
Eustace.
That's just what it's made of. Yeah, it's not what a star is.
Yeah, that's a lovely bit.
I want to share a little bit from the Global Church History Project.
Yes.
Have you read any of this stuff? So, several time guest on various Speak Life things, Paul Blackham. I think it's his son, PJ, heads up this thing called the Global Church History Project. And it's available on Facebook, and you can sort of look up the posts and things. We'll put a link to it. And I find it really interesting because, in a sense, keeping some of the weird in our faith, one of the ways that people find that in terms of seeing the depth, the greater depth of the gospel, is by doing international mission work, and you go and see the gospel as it's being lived out and Christ being honored and worshipped around the world in different cultures, but also put that into a historical context as well. And it's doubly weird because it's not just a foreign land, it's a foreign time. And so he has this great thing on the 6th of January is the feast to celebrate Jesus as King of all the nations. Although the Feast of Epiphany celebrates a fact about Jesus himself, there are three main saints we think about, the three wise men. And a longer post, but I just want to read to you, this is a great description, from none other than the Saint Bede the Venerable.
The Venerable Bede.
The Venerable Bede gave this memorable description of the Magi. So I just want to read this. And this is where I don't know, you can investigate it more, but I think the traditional names of the Magi come from here. So this is what St. Bede the Venerable says. These are the Magi who gave the gifts. The first was called Melchior, old and aging, with a full beard and long hair, a violet robe, a green cape, and a pair of shoes with blue and white mixed together. The work of many men, right?
I'm just imagining a kind of Quentin Tarantino thing right now. Reservoir Dogs. They're walking.
Mr. Blonde. Right. His turban was dressed in varying compositions. He offered gold as for a king. So you got Melchior offering the gold, old and aging, full beard, right? And his clothing descriptions, right? The second's name was Caspar, a young, beardless, red-headed youth. He wore a bright green robe, a bright red cloak, and blue shoes. He offered the incense as an offering worthy of God, right? So you got the color of...
Yeah.
You're going to have to remember these. There'll be quizzed
red,
on
green,
them shortly.
blue. Okay.
If anyone's on the
Very
live
primary
chat.
colours going on.
The third, called Balthazar.
Hey, name of my cat.
The name of Mr. Scrivener's cat.
Yep.
Was black and had a full beard.
Yep, as my cat does.
He had a dark red robe interwoven with white. He wore green shoes.
Yes.
He offered up myrrh for the Son of Man, professing that he must die. They all wore clothes of pure silk. Because they were pure men, they covered themselves in purity.
Awesome. So beads. So we're talking about 6th century.
That is the full costume description for every nativity. If I go to a nativity this year, and I find out that Caspar is not wearing blue shoes, I'll be like, "This is nonsense! What on earth is going on?"
It'll be a catwalk. It's just fierce. They are fierce. But I love the Venerable Bede saying, "Okay, myrrh is because the Son of Man must die."
Yeah.
And the bitter perfume.
Yeah.
That. Because gold and frankincense, we've already said, like from Psalm 72, also from Isaiah 60, it's very clear that the kings from the east should bring gold and frankincense.
Yeah.
Myrrh, you got to do a bit more work. Like, where's the myrrh coming from? But these guys, they knew.
They get it done.
But it is a strange gift, isn't it, at a baby shower, like bring a coffin.
Yeah.
Like it's a little coffin for Jimmy.
Wrapped him.
Thanks.
But yes, in terms of so check that out. Sorry, just to give the reference again. Global Church History Project.
Yes.
And you can read full-size posts like this every day by subscribing to www.patreon.com/Global Church History. I find it really just fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I can fully comprehend how I synthesize all of the things that are on there.
Yeah.
With what I read in the scriptures. But what's great is it feels like it's constantly pulling me back to a deeper appreciation for what's there in the gospel that I do know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because actually, you can sort of poo-poo stuff like the Nativity tableau, and you can say, well, because the kings and the shepherds weren't there at the same time, and they weren't actually kings, and there wasn't actually a stable. And but actually, the reason why we've thought of 3 kings like Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar, and given them those names that are not found in the Bible, you actually press into it, and you end up discovering that they're descended from the 3 different sons of Noah and things like that. They trump you on their biblical kind of richness. Yeah. When you think, oh, it's just the accretions of the medieval church, and we want to be, we want to like clear out all of that stuff. Actually, you delve into why it is that they've gone for 3 kings and this kind of stuff, and like the oxen in the stable and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And you're like, well, there's no oxen in the stable, and it wasn't a stable, and that sort of thing. But like the early church comes back at you and say, well, what do you make of Isaiah 1? Like Isaiah 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, Isaiah 1's all about the nativity. Did you not read it about the nativity? Are you not that Christ focused? Man, you're meant to be the liberal. I'm not the liberal.
That's funny. But they were thinking about the sort of the celebration of Epiphany as a practice.
Yes.
As a thing to do.
What should we do? Should we send cards? I mean,
What did you do for 12th night?
12th night, well, obviously all the decorations are down for 12th
Okay.
night, because if they're not down by the end of 12th night, you've got to keep them up until Candlemas, people.
Well, that's not what the lady in the Chinese restaurant I went to last night said.
Okay.
So I went in to pick up my Chinese to celebrate 12th night.
A wise woman
by
from the
having
East?
a She wasn't actually Chinese.
Okay.
I think she... Yeah, I don't know where she's from.
from
She
from
said,
Hastings, which is
she
also
was-
from the East.
It would have been very surprising to me if I'd found out that this particular lady was Chinese. Anyway, she was taking down Christmas decorations.
Okay.
And as I walked through, I was like, it always feels a bit sad when you're taking them down. She says, well, you've got to take them down on 12th night. And I was like, oh, why is that?
Yeah.
She said, it's bad luck.
Yeah.
And I was like, is it? And she said, yeah. And
Yeah,
then I
yeah,
went,
yeah.
well, this is Epiphany tomorrow. And she was like, oh, what's that? So I sort of tried to give
Yeah.
through my face mask and trying to pay for my
Yeah.
crispy shredded chicken and Singapore rice vermicelli. I can give you the whole order another time. But the issue was that she was like, oh, no, that we have to have this tradition. She had no idea what bad luck was going to happen.
No.
She didn't take it to Candlemas. She
Yeah.
didn't, like,
Yeah.
up that bad boy.
But you're like, why is she allowed to have like a story about bad luck, and you're not allowed to have like Casper, Melchior, and Balthazar? You know, like let's.
Well,
let's
so
be ready
that
for
this
story.
is what I've discovered yesterday, which is called a practice.
Teach us.
So it's a practice called chalking the door.
Chalking the door.
Which sounds like a euphemism, doesn't it?
Chalking the
Oh,
dawn
no,
sounds like a euphemism.
Yeah,
but
but
chalking the
door. Just chalking the door.
So we chalked the door
right?
that night.
Which is basically this sort of practice. And I'm sure people can say, oh, well, of course, this is just, all extra biblical nonsense and we shouldn't do it and stuff. Every single conservative evangelical Sunday school is doing craft activities to help children remember particular aspects of the Bible teaching.
Maybe it's not extra biblical. Maybe it's hyper biblical.
Hyper biblical.
I want to be hyper
So
biblical.
this is what you do. Apparently, you get a bit of chalk and on your door frame, you write the year split into two. I don't know why this is the case, but so you'd write sort of 20. And then you sort of write
in Hindu-Arabic numerals. Okay.
22.
From the East, I
right?
guess. Yep.
And then there's a cross there because it's all about Christ. And then I think you do C,
Yep.
which I'll explain in a moment.
Yep.
Another cross.
Yep.
M, another cross. B, and then another cross.
Wow.
And so that you apparently it's almost like you're reenacting the Passover by sort of symbolizing that your house is being marked out
Yep.
for this year for the gospel. And then these three letters, C, M, B, they're doing double duty.
Yeah.
As I love that phrase. Because they don't only stand for Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar. I'm going to get this wrong now. I'm going to have to, because there's a Latin phrase which is Christus Masonem Benedicat, I think.
Don't know how we're conjugating, but yes.
So it's Christ house bless. So Jesus bless this house.
Yeah.
2020. You've got a cross there, cross there, cross there. Caspar, Melchior, Balthazar. That is the chalking of the door.
Chalking of the door.
And you're just sort of doing it as a little reminder that it's Epiphany and all the nations come to the King of Kings.
It's apocryphal though,
And
it's
it
extra
is.
biblical.
Well, so's this speakeasy. But we somehow
I like to be
away with-
extra biblical. If you want to be
Hyper-biblical.
sub-biblical, if you want to be sub-biblical, fine. I want to be extra biblical here.
But yeah, so that's a thing that people apparently do.
I love it.
Which I just discovered yesterday. And so we thought we'll do that, would sort of talk our kids through it tonight.
Yes.
And we're going to get the chalk from the beach. We're going to use Eastbourne's own sort of
To symbolize, because the sea is like the nations, right?
we look out
Brought-
across to the French, yeah. We say even them, even
Brought
the
home.
French
Brought home.
can be
But-
brought into
Yeah.
the blessed hospitality of the Christian home, which is obviously what Mary and Joseph do.
Let's do it. I love it.
Welcome in
Yeah.
the nations.
On the subject of symbolism,
Yeah.
isn't it interesting that astrologers are able to look at a sign in the stars
Yeah.
and to interpret them with all sorts of theological and political meaning.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, so that's that star which Chris Nichols, is that his name? Has done some great work on the Star of Bethlehem as the Christ comet, and you can find all sorts of podcasts and videos that he's done. And linking it together with Revelation 12 and how, the star seems to be in the Virgin or in Virgo and the scepter, and, maybe this is what's going on, that they are interpreting through the astrological houses that there is...
People I think they're logging off right now. This is going into astrology now.
What's wrong with astrology?
No, but that's the thing is I'm like, is there? What is it
There is lots that's wrong with astrology.
Okay.
But there's nothing wrong with saying there's lots that's wrong with astrology in the form that we know it.
Right.
In terms of in the back of a tabloid newspaper telling you you're going to be lucky in love and meet a tall dark stranger. Yeah. Like to look at all the stars and think this is telling me whether I'm going to move jobs or not.
Right.
Is ridiculous. But the stars are saying something.
But they're just not saying something about you.
That's
the key thing, isn't it?
They're not that into you.
Yeah.
They're very into Jesus, right?
Okay.
And medieval astrology was all about the stars speak.
Yeah, and Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God.
The glory of God.
How?
So the Aster star logos speech. Okay, so we love and we think it's very respectable to be into astronomy.
Yes.
Which is the nomos of the Aster, the laws of the stars. So the stars are obeying iron laws, and they're just doing their thing because of necessity.
Yeah.
We're very uncomfortable with astrology, that the stars are actually saying something, but the stars are totally saying, Jesus is Lord, creation's voice proclaims it.
And that's where we have to use the lenses of Scripture to understand. So the special revelation of God in Scripture is then used to make sense of the general revelation of God.
And clearly the Scriptures have been doing a work on them in the East because they kind of bring the right gifts. And they know that this is the king of the Jews. Yeah. So there's something scriptural already in their understanding. Yeah. And then when they get to Jerusalem, it's the Scriptures that tell them it's Bethlehem. Yeah. And so, absolutely, just looking at the stars is not going to lead you to Christ in and of itself. Yeah. Not that the stars are not proclaiming Christ. They are totally proclaiming Christ. But the Scriptures are, Calvin said, they're like spectacles that help you to see what is already there. And so there they come, and they bow down, and let's kind of finish with this point, that they bow down and worship a baby.
Yes.
When there's already a king of the Jews on the throne. A monstrous power, who seems to be the legitimate ruler.
Yeah.
But they question the legitimacy of his rule.
Yeah.
Rightly. And they're like, no, we're going to go with the Psalm 72 thing. Hence we bring the gold and the frankincense and the myrrh. We're going to bow to the one who would come in weakness for the weak. The one who is like for the little guy, so much that he becomes the little guy. And so, as we think, who knows if in 10 years' time we'll be thinking about January 6th in terms of the Capitol building.
Yeah.
Who knows? But we have for hundreds and thousands of years been thinking of January 6th in terms of who is the true ruler and on what basis can we trust in the reign that is over us. And it's pretty good to know that the one who reigns over us actually has compassion and lifts up the lowly and crushes the oppressor.
Mm-hmm.
And
so we're saying stay off QAnon. Stay out of probably the tabloid newspaper astrological sign section to read your star chart sort of thing.
Yeah.
But if you dive into the Scriptures, you will find the real conspiracy, the genuine truth that is being suppressed by the mainstream news media and all this sort of stuff.
Yes, that's true.
And you will also then find a way in which you could start to think about the stars and the word that they're speaking. I think we need to do more on, because I feel like I don't know what to say, because
there are 12 houses. Come on, if that's not biblical, I don't know what is.
But go on, man. Go fine if it's that easy.
One of them is Virgo, and the Virgin and blah blah blah. We need to.
We should. We should. And we should
press
find
into it.
someone else who knows a bit more about it than we do,
totally-
or at least read up on it.
That is totally true. That's probably true about everything that
Yes.
comes out of our mouths. But
Almost certainly.
there it is. Epiphany, the real theophany, the real appearance, the real manifestation of God is as a baby, the little guy who comes for the little guy. And we can entrust ourselves to him, whatever happens with our political rulers, no matter how Herod-like or otherwise they might appear to be. We know who the true King of the Jews is, and all the nations have been invited to worship him. So
There we are.
that's Epiphany. So I'm off to get some chalk. I don't know about you guys, but
Meet you on the beach.
let's go and chalk the doors. Nate
Yeah.
Morgan, Locke, thank you so much for joining us.
Glen, Scrivener, thank you very much.
See you later, guys.